Police strike.
9:03.
That's it.
Good morning, everyone. We will call the meeting to order. I need confirmation we're legally posted.
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Chad. Approval of the minutes from June 1st.
So done.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, any changes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, opposition, motion carries. Public comment on agenda items. Anyone have anything they'd like to address that's on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to agency reports, which is no, and that's FSA and NRCS. NRCS. Good morning, how are you?
I got multiple food.
I thought you did.
I don't have a whole lot. I just wanted to let everybody know that we have a new state conservationist for NRCS right now. Just started Monday, actually. He was in the past, an employee within the state. He worked kind of his way up. He was originally from Michigan, I believe. And then he's worked in Wisconsin, had worked in Wisconsin for a number of years. Ty Larson is his name. He worked in Wisconsin Rapids as a district conservationist. He worked in Appleton as a district conservationist. He worked in the northeast area as an area resource conservationist. And then he moved over, got a job with Minnesota, was there for maybe a year. Then he applied for the state conservationist position. So he got the state conservationist position. So that's going to be kind of nice to have somebody from that's familiar with Wisconsin, familiar with our staff throughout the state, and he'll a great person to have back on board in Wisconsin. Other than that, I have an Appleton 2 positions posted right now for a biological science position, which is basically sort of conservationist to add to the staff of 3 that I have right now over in Appleton, and then another resource town. So that those would be paid staff for both counties, right? So that's what's happening with staffing and great. As far as programs go, we got notified of pre-approvals for our equip program. So working on some contracts there, and probably more to improve here next week's. Always kind of trickle in. Hopefully, we get a lot more. We had, I think I tallied it up for another meeting that I had. We had like $1 million already funded in like 1 year here through our programs. So it's a lot of money coming into the county.
There you go. Sure, go ahead.
So just an update on our freight miles program. I know some of you may have been here when I kind of gave my little spiel about it, so a reminder. We have a program that we assist with. We have a couple other partners that we work with to map freight miles, kind of in the eastern part of the state, and then get controlled treatment. So right now we are mapping Brown County, and we'll be getting control funding for that hopefully next year. But the plan is to apply for a grant coming in September to map it. So that's coming up real quick, and then hopefully once we get the funding to do that, we'll be coming out in about March of next year.
So would it be helpful for us to get sites that we know of?
Yeah, that is very helpful. Yeah, because it's kind of my truck, so usually there will be like 2 or 3 of us that'll go out. Somebody drives and we just map it on our phone as we go. So we try to get as much mapped as possible. We also have forms for private landowners if they want to report where it is. We can kind of come in and map it out. It's in the database and we know about it. And then from there, once we have everything mapped, we get an invasive species management plan ready. How it's worked in the past is multiple counties have one management plan, so we're probably. And then once we have that, the acreages, we can apply for that grant.
That reporting form for private landowners, is that something you could get to our department, and we could share? That would be
Yeah, for
helpful.
sure. Yeah, it's on our website, but I can definitely send you an email with a link and then also.
What do they spray it with?
I think they do more like 2,4-D, they do,
Is it more grass or broadleaf?
well, it's Phragmites, so I think it would be a grass herbicide.
Yeah, it's Phragmites is a grass, so it would probably be something similar to Roundup. That's would kill grasses and broadleaves, but I'm not sure what the chemical, they could use something other than. like,
Glacial works with partners, so typically we work with Stantec. So it's kind of whatever they're using when they go out in the field to treat, we just map it.
I've got a patch up by my cabin in Crivets, and my nephew has worked in the private sector, eliminating prickly pear and all the other stuff. He says that the deal with Phragmites is you always spray it in the fall, so that it goes down into the roots. And then you make sure to go back the next year in the fall, because you never get 100%, but you get 80%, then you can zero in on the rest. So his deer hunting stand this year depends on whether he gets mine sprayed and how successful it is.
So is there like a multi-year treatment plan?
So from my understanding, I believe it's at least 2 years of treatments. It kind of depends on how bad the patches are, because with invasives, again, you have like different zones. So if there's a population just starting, you're able to eradicate it if it's a small population. But if it's a huge population, then you're just kind of doing damage control. You're never going to eradicate it in that sense. But yeah, it sounds like they go back at least 2 years in a row, or try to hit it 2 years in a row. It kind of depends on funding. You know, that's the name of the game, I guess. But
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody on Zoom? That's an agency, I don't see anything.
I'm good, thanks.
We will go to announcements.
All right, good morning, everyone. Few announcements are, I am working on the 2024 budget. It's due on August 7th, so we currently don't have levy targets assigned this year. We're just, the direction is to try and do a responsible budget. So we will be over what we had last year because we brought in revenue. I had about $15,000 of grant revenue that we brought in. It was one-time revenue. So I can't bring that in 2024. So we'll see how everything shakes out within the department. But we'll be as frugal as we can be with our budget. Obviously, the people costs have gone up because some of the wage adjustments that were recently done. So that will be recognized, I think, in the budgeting process. So again, due on August 7th, and then it'll be meeting with the executive in August to go over it, and then it will be in October that I'll be able to present it to the committee, the draft budget that we have that already went through the executive process. So that's how it will be done this year.
Prior to the budget session.
Yes. Yes.
Are you being asked to adhere to the new budget criteria?
I'm not totally clear on that yet. I know they're kind of doing that in tandem with the priority-based budgeting, but I think we're just getting started with the priority-based budgeting and not all in this year is the vibe I'm getting.
Okay.
So it's similar to budgeting in the past where you have your line item budgeting. And next year, I think it'll be more on the priority-based side. So one thing we did within the department is they have a program that was bought for the county. I put in all of our programs that we have. I think we had 20 plus different things we do within our department. And then with that, then will be dollars attached to each of those programs, and then what people are working on those programs. So there's a lot of moving parts with that, but we're just getting started with that, getting everything entered into that priority-based budget tool that we have. So it's coming. I don't think it'll be all done this year. I don't know how we get it all done this year, being already July, but we're just getting our feet wet, and started with that. So it's a whole different way of budgeting. I'm not sure how it'll be with the priority side of it, how things will get ranked. That'll be determined as far as what the priorities are.
Oh, I wasn't, is everyone aware that priority mean a ranking system? Is that what that
There'll be a scoring system with everything that we do. The good thing for our department,
is?
I don't know that. We have a lot of state mandated programs that we have, so it helps our department, justifies the work that we do. And there's a lot of good social things we do too with our county program, where we work with farmers, as you all know, these different things that we do. So I think there's a lot of value, and in my opinion, I'm biased, but there's a lot of priorities that I think in the county comes through this department.
Is there much money that's going to be coming from the state budget?
We do have, some of our staff is funded through the state budget. We get cost sharing from the state. There's grants we get from the state. So we do have money that funnels through the state, and the state has mandates that are on the backs of county land conservation departments that we're responsible for. So that's why we get some of that funding. I wish it was more, and that'll dovetail into one of the other comments here. Because DADCAP and the state puts all this pressure on county land conservation departments, I wish they would give us more staffing money to cover some of that. And they do give us some. We get about 185,000 every year, roughly.
But I thought that in this new one for 24, 25,
Mhm.
that there was even more money for the land conservation.
Okay, that, I'll go right to that. So what happened with that is, yes, that was proposed to put more money in county land conservation departments across the state through DADCAP. It got to joint finance, and they actually went backwards and gave us less funding. It was a big surprise. We thought there was bipartisan support to at least give us an increase, you know, with inflation and everything going on with wages, to at least try and keep up with that. Looks like we're going backwards. So in a nutshell, we're at 11.3 million, and it looks like it's going to be just under 11 million. So a little over 300,000 less in 2024. So that will be distributed across all the 72 counties, but it isn't going up. So that's a big disappointment. Very surprised at that. I don't know where wires got crossed or what exactly happened, but they didn't support it. I thought 13 million was going to pass from what I was hearing, and it just kind of fell apart.
They were supposed to correct that.
They were supposed to, and
Corrective
it's-
action, they did do that.
that's what I'm hearing, that it did not get corrected. So I wrote, we did the resolution through county board. I sent letters to state reps, did what we could at our level. So
Does that mean a levy increase then to support that loss of revenue?
yeah,
Because I
that's,
assume you already had that fixed in last year. or this
that
year.
was fixed in this year. So what that's going to be, if it's $10,000 to $20,000. I don't know exactly how much yet, but it's going to be a hit in the budgeting process for sure.
That's what I'm seeing.
It's frustrating. It really is. State, I mean, again, they have all these programs that are pushing on us. And it covers about 1.5 positions in the department, but that number will go down now because of inflation and the wages going up. It's gonna cover less and less across the state, because a lot of, it's not just our county that's doing it. There's a lot of counties that are making wage adjustments. And the money we were getting from that, it's not gonna go as far as it was. So we'll see. Again, I'll try to run a frugal budget the best I can, but some of these things are out of my control. We'll do the best we can. We have just a couple places we can cut within our budgets. It's already a pretty tight budget. So. Let's see. So. Better news. We applied for a DNR urban non-point source and stormwater management planning grant. That's to help cover the costs with our MS4 remodel. And the preliminary rankings came out and we were ranked in the top half in the whole state for that grant. So it looks like we're going to get that funding to cover 50% of the expenses for the remodel. We do that on behalf of the highway department to get that work done. So that was good news. I'm working on the position description for the Climate Smart Commodity Grant. That is going to start in 2024, and I'm titling the project position. It's a Project Soil Health Specialist is going to be the title. So I need to get that position description done by the end of August to get that approved from HR and to keep things moving with that. But again, we'll be hiring beginning of 24, hopefully get someone on board for that grant. Still moving very slow with USDA. It's a little frustrating how slow it's going. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of reporting. I have my concerns about trying to hire 8 staff at the same time across the region. I know I've mentioned that. We'll see where it goes though. So we're going to keep things moving and probably start advertising in November or December for that position. It's a 3-year position. Again. Contractors, we've been sending out projects on RFPs, and one thing we're trying to do within the department is get ahead of the game. We have basically 2 out of our 3 technicians are new and they're getting trained. So we're trying to get them up and running and trained. But my goal is to get these bids out 6 months in advance at some point where we can get ahead of the game, because we're not getting a lot of bids back from contractors. We're lucky if we get 2 back right now. So it's been frustrating to try and get these practices in, but if we can get ahead of the game, I think it's going to help our cause and getting more bids for all the work that we do. And the last thing I have, we are going to apply for a producer-led grant that will be coming to you in August to get approval to apply for that grant. And then that would advance to PNF and County Board in September. The deadline is September 15th, but I got approval from DADCAP that we can just put a note on the application that approval will be completed on September 19th at County Board. We're applying for only $5,000 to get this producer-led group up and running. They're calling themselves the Muddy Bottom Farmers. It's going to be their name for the producer-led group, and there's 12 farmers on that group. And in 2024, those funds are going to be used to get that group up and running, and then to have a field day and like a kickoff event. So it's just getting kind of starting things off with a little bit of that money, and then they would have to apply every year after. We would be the collaborator on that grant application, and then we are also going to be the fiscal agent. So we will handle the $5,000 in-house and work with them to submit receipts and get rolling. And then in 2025, they may have somebody, part of that group, that may take over the fiscal responsibility. We'll see. We're just doing it in 2024 so they can get up and running. He is turning with that. That's all I have for announcements, unless anyone has questions.
Chad, questions, Chad? Julie? Any questions? Okay, committee chair report, I really don't have anything other than what is agenda item A. We'll get into that here on the business side. Any questions of me? Hearing none, we will go to Julie. Any questions?
No, Chuck, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to business item A. If you're not aware, the Ad hoc Structure Review Task Force recommendation committee specific to the makeup of committees. That ad hoc committee has finished their work, and their recommendations now go to the Judiciary Committee meeting on July 10th. They have recommended lots of changes within the committee structure, but specific to us, they are recommending that we be merged under a new committee name of Natural Resources, and that would cover UW Extension, Parks and Recreation, and Land Conservation. So those 3 committees are merged together with the responsibility currently, you have 15 supervisors that oversee these three committees, 5 on each. Of course, under this structure, there would only be 5 supervisors overseeing the 3 committees. So I bring it to your attention. I'll certainly give you my personal opinion on this new proposal.
You're being recorded, Chuck.
That's quite all right. I intend to be right up front and transparent on this one. So I'm of the opinion that that is a detriment to this committee and is not in the best interest of this committee to be part of that new structure process. We should be a standalone Chapter 92 Land Conservation Committee. I think that merging us with other committees would somewhat diminish our voice. I think it would perhaps diminish the work we do and the importance of the work that we do. So I just, something I'm going to have a hard time supporting. I bring this to your awareness because this will be an agenda item, which I have here, Judiciary Committee on the 10th of July. And I believe that meeting starts at 6, as I recall.
Yes, it's done. Yes.
Let me
it does.
verify that. Yep, at 6 p.m. So certainly if you have an opinion, I'd appreciate hearing that today, but other than that, I would certainly urge you to go to the committee meeting on this 10th.
Chuck,
Yes,
did they provide any explanation for the reasoning for combining the committees?
bear with me. Maybe. It's probably in this document. I did talk to Paul Eisen, who's a member of that committee. And he actually issued a minority report. You should probably see that at some point in time because it was a very well done report. His opinion is that is the part of it that's lacking. What is the reason to change from our current structure to a new structure? And in Paul's opinion, and I believe mine, there is no reason given.
I mean, because quite
It's just an
frankly,
initiative
yeah,
that is apparently, per Paul Eisen's minority report, a position of administration.
because none of the committees do the same thing. So you couldn't get anything done for any of the different departments because there would never be enough time.
If you were, and I'll add to that, if you were to hold them all on the same day.
Yeah.
right, You're looking at, I estimate, 4 to 6 hour committee meetings.
Yeah,
That was my
I
question.
mean, just, pardon me?
That was my question, is how much would the committee time be if you're joining these 3 and each one of them is 2 hours?
Yeah, the chairman determines to set that up where you're gonna do it one day, 4 to 6. The other option would be you can meet 3 times a month, different dates. Now, remember, only 5 supervisors.
Can I chime in? And
So
then, because,
then it would be all spread out. And you would have more monthly meetings.
Are you saving any money that way? Excuse me, Chad.
Pardon me?
Are you saving any money by doing it that way?
No.
Because wasn't that?
Well,
the
this is
intent
only part of
this?
it. The other part, the other ad hoc committee is proposing a salary for the new term. If that is approved, you won't get paid for committee meetings. You just get a salary, $500 a month. is the proposal.
so the other part of all this too are in chapter 92, it identifies citizen members, right? So if they merge committees, I don't know the answer to it, but then would Bruce and Dan have to sit through that whole committee meeting if it is held on one day, if it's Parks Extension and us? Or do you just sit through just the part for land conservation? I don't know how that would be structured or how that.
Well, first of all, they're still recognized and will be appointed to the committee. Now, for your example, the chair, of course, would set the agenda. If you had LCC first, you go through that.
So would they not be
Normally
recognized
meetings.
as part of the overall committee for the whole?
No,
natural-
they're not going to be on Parks Committee or,
But if it's all one, that's where I'm getting confused, if you're calling it all one committee.
I think my perception would be you would have like 3 meetings under the structure of the Natural Resources Committee. And then you would go through your agenda for Parks, Extension, LCC, in whatever order you would set up. I assume the chairman would vary that, who would be first,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
Do they even know what UW Extension does? Apparently not, because it's not just natural resources, it's human resources. Oh my God. Thanks for letting us know, Chuck.
One of the things I found interesting about that committee is that, if I'm not mistaken, 3 of the people who are on it are on the JPS.
I'll bring it up on the 10th because Chairman Egan is gone on vacation. He's at a wedding, actually, out of state. So I'll be acting in his position as chair. And that is my question. We have a conflict of interest, very obviously. 4 of the judicial committee members are on the ad hoc committee, making the recommendation committee they're going to vote on.
Yeah.
So they get to vote twice on the same issue, which they recommend. Yeah, that's very horrible. Stafford is the only one that was not put on that.
Well, yeah, excuse me.
I think, and I would hope that the LCC committee members are going to have a lot of concern and that they attend the meeting on the 10th to address this. Obviously, the committee members are, can I use the word biased? They've already formed an opinion. So the debate will probably happen in September, according to Tom Egan. He wants to do it during a special session. And it should be lively and lengthy.
Another midnight one.
Well, I think it's only going to be the 2 items. That's why we're doing a special session, if Tom follows through with his comments, but that's kind of where it's going to be. It's going to be, this requires, I believe, a 2/3 vote. The salary structure requires a 3/4 vote.
Just wanted to add, we sat through kind of the same thing on the solid waste board.
I watched you on.
Yep, and eventually they kind of relented, and the whole structure of the solid waste board would require a lot more changes. Likewise, we have the same citizen committee there, and the last recommendation was to just leave solid waste alone, because it's working the way it is, and it would be way too complicated to intermingle that. I'd like to think land conservation is kind of in that same category with the citizen governments and so forth. So I see so little that they're accomplishing by merging them. We've got 36 supervisors spread them out. The only thing I can see is that you're gonna end up with a small number of supervisors that are going to be in control of an awful lot of public committees. That's my opinion.
Yes, I'm not sure of that opinion. Judiciary would remain by itself. Planning and zoning would remain independent. Aviation, I'm sorry, you're correct. It was 3, not 4, because Mary Beth is on there also. Her committee would remain independent. Solid waste. So not all committees are being merged, but
No, and
some are.
2 out of 3 proposals were us with P and Z. So that would have really bogged things down to get roped into the regulatory side of things. And you know, I value so much of the input that I get from all of you to create our policy, and my fear is that that's gonna be lost. I don't wanna have 15 minutes to work with my committee on trying to get policy passed. So it's important that we have the time, and I we do all the input from all of you, and at the end, we always, I feel like, have a good final product. And maybe it wouldn't be lost with this, but I am a little concerned that we would get 50,
And if I can give a thought here, it appears that because we're talking about land and how it is being utilized, that is how they may be thinking that they should be merged. But being on this committee makes me say, listen, there's an awful lot of information here that is really valuable. And if you choose to come, you're gonna find your head exploding because of that amount of information and trying to learn what it is. But at Park and Rec, it's how are you using the land that's the Park and Rec?
different things, important both.
Oh, yeah, two different responsibilities.
Absolutely.
They had the same thing when you did extension. They have a lot of things, and I was on that committee for 2 terms, I recall. They have a lot of state programs they administer. And just explaining those programs and doing the presentations by the people that actually oversee them is very time consuming. So it's, I mean, it's not only time, it's just a different responsibility than land water has. So I don't see the merging or.
Well, and then you think in terms of the merging of the various counties and all of this as well. So that makes it a little bit more complex.
And I don't see any efficiencies. I don't see anything being done more efficient. I think we do a good job. I think we are efficient. I think obviously we have an administration that is promoting more efficient process and that kind of stuff. And that might be fine and dandy, but when it comes to the committees, I'm not sure the word applies correctly to being efficient. We have our work to do, and if, like we're doing right now, I mean, this policy is a big deal. It takes time, takes a lot of work. So if we had to do this and we were merged with other committees, I don't know how that would work. Yes, sir.
And we maybe, if you merge us, we might end up busting the heads, just looking at Parks and Rec. They want to build more boat launches, they want to have more boat ramps, they want to have, even the Oshkosh Visitors Guide has got off a wake boat on the front cover of the guide. They're promoting wake boats, and I look at the Lake Winnebago boating every day. They're trying to figure out which beach has clean enough water because the others are all green, and they're promoting more boats that are stirring up the bottom, and we're trying to get the potassium out of the river.
Really
And
good point.
Parks is encouraging you, oh my God, the 4 horsemen, let's get all these $500,000 million boats and let's race up and down the little river. And Chad's trying to build rock walls to help prevent this.
Yeah.
Well, Chad, why aren't you building the rock walls in the middle of the?
Block them off.
Yeah,
I do that in Menasha to you.
Winnie County, I was hoping they'd build a bridge that was about 8 feet high. If you can't get under it, you don't belong up there. So,
boy, that is a very valid point. We are definitely gonna have conflict of interest between us.
there you go. We're gonna need referees when we fight amongst ourselves.
Well, yeah, that would be an issue.
I was trying to relax my kayak on the 4th of July and a small lake, and there was 2 wake boats going around. They got within 100 feet of where I'm just against the shoreline, throwing a 5-foot wave at me. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is
Why
ridiculous.
didn't you come over to the Pine River?
It's more peaceful over there,
It
yes.
really is.
But you also gotta carry your kayak up and over all the down trees too. That, been there, done that.
Well, I bring it for your awareness. Please be active in it. Hopefully, hopefully we're of like mind in regard to our department and our committee. So,
I have a question.
yeah,
Is this combination, has it ever been done before? I've never heard of this. I've heard of extension. and
there was a
CCs,
study
but,
from 2007. I've been on the board since 2002. There was a study in 2007 that was done and brought forward to the full county board. It was shut off at one meeting and put on the shelf and never revisited. That study is one of the reasons they're promoting the change.
So it has been.
So I don't know how far back in history you want to go, but that's kind of part
There are
Has it
some
of it. To answer your
counties,
question, no.
there are some counties that are, I think in the western part of the state, they're not merged departments, but they do have merged committees.
Committee.
Yeah, and then there are some that are merged departments as well.
Yeah.
Kelly, that was merged and became unmerged because it just didn't work to be merged with planning and zoning. It was 2 different worlds. And
Yeah, the planning and zoning in LCC, I just heard of that, but not the parks and extension. and-
Actually, Calumet County is one that the first started.
Yeah.
And that's one issue Paul Eisen raises in his minority report. If we reduce the county board size at the next census, then you would look at merging committees because you got less county board members. Keeping the county board at 36, which is pretty much what we're obligated until 2030, it just doesn't logically make sense to do that. That's his thoughts. I somewhat agree with that.
At the county board level, are all of these statements going to be made? I mean, are we gonna get Paul's denial of wanting to do this? Are we gonna have the other 3 who were saying they want to do it this way? Are they gonna come up with their rationale for doing that?
Yes, they will, it'll be in the form of a resolution
Okay,
that'll be presented at whatever meeting Tom decides to have it at. And then, of course, there'll be robust debate and discussion.
you think?
I think we're gonna have probably issues with the 2-minute rule, but
Yeah,
hopefully it's gonna be very lengthy and very in-depth. Now, I talked to Paul Isaac, he gave me a copy of his minority report. I asked him if I could share that, you know, if he wanted to do it publicly, and he said, whatever you want to do with it, Chuck, is fine. So I'm thinking maybe I should just have the clerk send it out.
Send it out to everybody, and I say that specifically because of the rule that I'm trying to get passed. It appears to me that for complete understanding, the group needs to have all of the background information. And if you keep that background information from me, I'm gonna sit there and say, why are we doing this? Or, you know, it makes sense because it's being brought forward.
Yes. And I've always felt the more information we have with supervisors, the more informed forward we're going to. So we'll,
And the more refined and
yes,
active it can become that way.
I'll have another discussion with Paul to verify that we can do that. If it's okay with him, I'll get over to clerk and get that done. You'll find it interesting reading. Yeah, very much so.
I find Paul very interesting.
Yeah, he does a lot of in-depth research.
He does.
I don't know, the guy must not have a life, but that's what he does. Any other questions? If not, we will move on to review and approve the, Julie, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to exclude you. Just speak up if you do.
All right, I will.
Okay, thank you.
I did want to mention, I'll be unable to attend that meeting on the 10th. I have an appointment. So if someone else was feeling like they could go, that would be great.
All right. Let's move on to business item B, review and approve the contents of the land water conservation spirit fund policy. That was soil health, I believe. And we had done this last month. We went all through it. But it was not an approved thing on the agenda. So let's bring it forward, put it on the table. Do I have a motion to put it on the table?
So moved.
Motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. It's back on the table for discussion. At this point in time, if you have any concerns, bring them up now and we can discuss that. If not, then we will ask for a motion to approve the document itself.
I make the motion to approve the document.
Second.
Could we mention a couple of things
More
before?
certainly can. Also, discussion. Go ahead.
Cute.
So it came to our attention with one of our grants that if you use a lot of different models for determining phosphorus and sediment, and we realized that the way we had written this is we have left it as just SNAP Plus to be used for this, and we wanted to make sure that we could use other models that can be better. So we wanted to, on the second page, and the second item down, we'd like to strike to document phosphorus and sediment savings. And we would like to add at the very end a point that says the LWCB will calculate the estimated annual phosphorus and sediment reductions. That leaves us open to using other models.
Okay, staff plus is the one we're using for the MS4 and all that, right?
That would be more for egg fields, food reductions, nutrient management.
Stamp
planning.
plus?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you want to use? And
There's,
what are the
there's
other?
different models out there that can be used, and we didn't want to limit it just to SNAP Plus. For example, Oaxaca County has a modified Russell 2 that they're doing their reductions. There's many different programs that can, or models that can be used.
Which
So,
would either be more restrictive or less restrictive?
it'd be more simple with some of these other ones. SNAP Plus can be a little complex for just trying to get phosphorus and sediment savings.
So don't change the reduction number, just the way you.
It
get
might slightly, but it's more,
Yeah.
it's a modeling exercise that we can take credit for the work we're doing in a nutshell. And we just don't want to limit us to SNAP Plus at the end of the day. Unless you have anything else to add, Sheila, but that was kind of the reason for.
Any?
Just with that, be an addition, I mean, I made the motion, I have no problem with that correction
You would be making a motion to approve the document as amended.
as amended.
And let's go over that wording again. So we'll write that in. It'll be updated in the final document you'll get next month.
So the LWCB will calculate estimated annual phosphorus and sediment reductions.
Groundwater conservation. You want to put in anything about the system or models or anything, or? You're still tying yourself to SNAP Plus, right? Even though you're making that statement. You want to say something about utilizing other model criteria if deemed necessary.
Yeah.
Give you a little more flexibility there.
I think that makes sense.
Your motion, sir, is that agreeable?
Totally.
Okay. You still have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we're moving to approve the document as amended. The amendment has been specified. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, opposition, the soil health spirit from program is approved. Let me put that in the right file there. Okay, now we will go to agenda item C, review and approve the contents of the Land Water Conservation Spirit Fund Policy Plan Conservation Buffer Program. This is the last in the series of 3, correct?
Yep.
So if we will go through this today, approve, disapprove, amend as you feel needed. In August, we will have the final report. We'll do a cover letter and present it to the committee. So that's the process. Now, to the Conservation Buffer Program, Chad,
Sure, I'll
I
just,
guess you get to explain all this here.
yep, I'll walk through it, and Sheila, if I missed anything, feel free to chime in. We originally started out as just a harvestable buffer program. We wanted to call it more encompassing, call it a conservation buffer program. So what we have here are really 3 components of what our conservation buffer program is. The first one would be field road buffer. So these would be 10-year contracts that would be cool season or warm season species, a minimum of 35 feet wide, up to 60 feet wide, and those would pay $150 an acre. And those would be adjacent to public road ditches. And we'll go through some of the details as we keep walking through this.
Ted, when you say public road, is that townships, villages?
Town, county, village road, just not a private road. It's where we want to do it. It would have to be a public
Okay.
road.
Okay.
If I might intervene, excuse me if I do. Bruce, that's something you buy into for $150 an acre?
Well, I don't know how many people.
You're taking it out of production.
Will I do it? No.
Okay. And the reason would be not enough money?
I think it, on some years, I think it's close, but even with the advent of higher pricings of things, the soybeans, you know, they're 15, July beans are $15 right now.
Well, we need is, I think Chad's predicament is to set a price, right? To set the floor.
It is, and then it's to, the initial proposal was 50 acres for a 10-year contract, 50 acres for 15 years. We had about 300,000 in the program. So we're trying to work within the budget too, but we can bump that up and do less of the hard practices. There's a little bit of flexibility here. But that's why I'm presenting it to you. We threw some numbers at you, and I can walk through some of the other programs and we can talk about those, but we went a little bit less on that. Not that it's not a high priority, but the higher priority would be the next 2 that are adjacent to like a perennial stream, an intermittent stream, a lake. It's a little higher priority. The road ditches are important, but it's not a perennial stream. But it's going to help the towns from ditches filling in, the direct conduits typically to water bodies. But again, not as high of a priority as a perennial stream or a lake.
This is simplicity. If you had, I just grabbed 60 bushel things, $13 is a fair number, I think, for next fall. That's $780 that should return minus whatever your input costs of this say $300 for easy math.
That's the question, because
That's
this is to
$680.
cover your profit,
Well,
right? That's the focus. Because if you're going to crop, you got your input costs and what you're left
well,
with.
again, I just,
That's, to me.
780
that's
minus
not
300
the
should be
issue.
pretty close. You got 580, you got a difference of $400.
Yeah.
You know, we make our livelihood off this.
Yeah, I really think that's,
And again, I think, I don't know what NRCS does for programs, and it probably can't be competing with them either. Or you gotta be somewhere within the criteria of what their numbers are, I would think.
This is kind of interesting to me because like CRP to buffer, we can't buffer road ditches. It's not allowed to be buffering road ditches under CRP. So it's not really an option.
Well,
It's
you're,
kind of a weird rule, but we don't have a road ditch.
And we see so much runoff coming off these A fields going right into the road ditches, so we thought it'd be a different practice because it is ineligible, like I said. But setting the price, again, we're trying to look at high priority, low priority. It's important, but is it the most important? I mean, you can't go up to $400 an acre. We just don't have the money.
Oh, I need to see my
to do
paperwork. Get off my.
I mean, we can adjust all these. That's why we're presenting. So
Well, what if the economy goes sour? And your beans are back to 10?
then nobody, then we won't,
Then everybody's gonna jump on
then we
that.
won't be here.
Right? I think is there a way we could word it that would be more flexible based on the farm economy?
I think that's where we get to review it every year and we can talk about it on an annual basis. That's my opinion instead of, I mean, we can't leave it that in flux. That's,
That was part of our previous.
I would think
discussion.
for this today, or as they were talking about, you have to be somewhat in line with, because you're dovetailing everything else at the, so you're not competing. We've said that, correct?
there's gonna be some, we can't, I mean, there's a lot of the same practices, the structural, the road ditches, obviously, we heard that.
Okay, she can't do that, but there still has to be a number. Go down to the next one, then, I mean.
We base it on CRP payments are based on soil
Right,
type
I understand.
and weighted averages, so based on the productiveness of the soil, it's a higher rental rate versus a less productive soil.
I do have an NRCS cost for field boundary, which is not the same thing. And that's where we started, was we looked at the field boundary with the native species, and it's $170 and some cents. Introduced species was $111. Take it out of production, and then it pops up to the 405. We are allowed to harvest on with warm in, I'm sorry, we're not allowed to harvest on the warm season, but we are allowed to harvest on.
One time.
Well, isn't even the exercise, if the numbers are correct or not correct, there's a value there, and they're similar to what you're saying. That you're offering something out there, and if people buy into it, they buy into it, if not,
Exactly,
And
some
then-
just
then
might
we just
wanna
have-
do it,
then we just have to move from there, so I wouldn't, I don't know if I get so hung up on the pricing. Besides a comparable that you can say like that.
Yeah.
And then just see what happens.
and we can
I think
always,
the greater thing is if people aren't buying, and then what do we do with excess monies and shift it around that we've talked.
and that's the beauty of meeting with all of you annually, if we're seeing that a part of the program isn't popular, we could adjust it, raise the rates, or maybe people are knocking down the doors and we need to lower it, you know. We're trying to do the best we can to come up with those numbers, but there's some flexibility there to adjust.
That dovetails into the concern about it needs to be done and reviewed at least by committee once a year to amend these numbers if needed.
And again, if these are lining up with a comparable, I think you have to run with it.
This is just a one-time.
It's, so it'd be a one-time payment, but 10 years, so 150 per acre times 10.
So you do get it.
You get it for 10 years, we're gonna pay it all up front, which we'll talk about.
Was that 15 grand?
Yep.
Okay, we'll continue, streamside harvest.
So again, we'll get into more of the details. This is kind of higher level with the rates. So next would be the streamside harvestable buffer. So this would, as the word says, this is harvestable. We have a 10-year option and a 15-year option. And it would be $175 an acre between 35 and 60 feet. And if a farmer's willing to go beyond 60 feet, we bump that up to $200 an acre from 61 to 150 feet. That would be the max, 150 feet wide. And then you have the 15-year option, which is identical with the rates. And then the third one, the streamside vegetated out of production buffer. This is pretty much mimics our existing buffer program and our county program. We wanted to include this as an option to be able to use the spirit funds. So this would be two options, a 10-year and a 15-year, and it's 35 up to 60-foot max, and that is a $300 a year payment because it's not harvestable, other than one time with our permission, if it's cool season, which we'll talk about. And then all these buffers, we would provide a 90% cost share to get the seed established. So the cost of the seed and time to get that buffer established.
I have a question, Chad. So
That's your-
for the stream side, harvestable and vegetative out of production buffer, what's the reason for having the 10 and the 15-year if they're the exact same pricing structure? Should there be a difference so that you're getting, like, for 50, if you commit to 15 years, you're getting that a little bit more money?
We talked about that. We were back and forth on what to do about that. We left it the same because our existing program was the same rate for a 10 or 15 year, and that's been approved for a county program. So the final consensus with my staff was to just keep it the same. But we did talk about that to provide a little bit bigger incentive to go on a 15-year contract, which you guys can approve that if you wanted to. It would be an option. It would just look a little different for our existing program. But I see the value there to go another 5 years if you bump that payment up a little bit more.
Your recommendation. What was discussed.
The final consensus with everyone within the department was to leave it the same, just because it matches, because if we change the stream side vegetative overproduction buffer and bump that up from 300, then our county program would be different. We'd have to change the county program.
Would they have to burn that or cut it once a year, or?
We recommend some mowing, spot treatment, maybe even burning with our approval
Sound like
for warm
CRP,
season. Warm season.
pretty much parallel to CRP.
Okay, I gotta go. Bye.
CRP doesn't allow any harvest.
I gotta go. Bye.
Bye, Julie.
Yeah, CRP doesn't allow any harvesting, so. We're still talking about harvestable buffers. That's a benefit that you gain out of this program.
I got a question separate from that before I forget it. Just gets paid all up front.
Yeah.
And someone's out of compliance.
They're paying it all back, every penny. It's what we're having, it's gonna be recorded on the deed. If they get that money up front and they're non-compliant, we're gonna do monitoring every 3 years. We're gonna have GPS points. We'll give them the opportunity to correct it. If they don't, they need to pay the money back to the company. That's how it's gonna be structured. Because we're paying all that money up front. So the other route would be is to pay every year, but it's an administrative nightmare to try and track all that. It's no different than a regular practice that gets recorded on the deed. For example, a shoreline buffer on a lake. We have somebody sells that property and then somebody wants to mow it down. It'll get flagged on the title search, and then they have to pay all the money back that it's happened before the money comes back to the department. So we would structure that. That way, otherwise, I don't want to hand out money and not stand.
Does the original owner pay it back? Does the person that
No,
installed it, the new owner
The
pay?
new owner, because when they sell that property, it's on the deed, it'll get flagged in the title search, so they are aware of it when they buy it. Unless the previous owner wants to pay it up front, part of the settlement of the real estate transaction. But either way, it's on the deed, it'll get flagged. So I'll kind of walk through this might answer more of your questions as we walk through this, but on the second page, it's the guidelines for cost sharing the buffers through the Spirit One program. So I'll walk down through the bullet points here. Eligibility will be determined by our department. We'll be on a first come, first served basis for who is eligible. The proposed buffer must have a water resource concern identified by us. It must have a row crop history of at least 4 out of the last 6 years at the time of sign up. Permanent pasture and CRP are not eligible. Like we just talked about, all cost share agreements will be paid in full once the practice has been installed and we verify that the growth has been established. And it must stay in for the full cost share agreement period, or the landowner will be responsible for reimbursing the entire payment back to the department. Operators receiving funding from another program, for example, through NRCS or PNR, or buffers are not eligible to enroll in the program at the same time. Now, if it comes out of CRP and they're gonna work it up and they want to re-enroll it, that would potentially be eligible to re-enroll. And that would go through the committee. The cost share agreement must be signed by all parties and land conservation staff approval before any work is done, so they can't go out there seated before the agreement's in place.
Question, so if it's in CRP, 10-year contract, and they pull it out, that has no profit. So it wouldn't qualify for the county program?
Then it would not.
Would not be eligible.
But
And that's an interesting point because
But in the past, I think in CRP, that was prop, you take it out, then it refers back. That's what I would understand it to be.
our county program, I think we'd have to check and see if the re-enroll, if you can re-enroll. I thought it was in, we've done it. It has to go through committee, but I'm pretty sure our existing buffer program allows that to re-enroll. So we might,
Yeah, for
I want to treat
CRP,
12.3.
CRP enrollment qualifies as profit stream.
On the federal.
okay,
Okay, so on 12.3, how do you want to address it?
So I don't think you want to encourage people to, like, if they have a
Work.
CRP contract, it ends, and then encourage them to fill it up, so they can get back to their program. Probably want to have them maintain it and then go with it.
so we have a row crop history of at least 4 to the 6 years of time sign up, and maybe we need to put something in there that re-enrollments in existing programs would be eligible or something to that effect.
Well, to be enrolled in CRP, it had to be crop. So
Right,
it comes
so
out.
it was eligible.
It
It
is.
had to be cropped.
So I think you're getting too, I think you're trying to make it too difficult.
Just keep it
Yeah,
simple.
Just let it roll
Let it-
in.
Yeah,
If it's in
Just
CRP,
put
because it has,
CRP,
that's
yeah.
a qualifier.
Say CRP.
Permanent pasture is not CRP.
But on CRP, if it was grass or whatever's in there, not to work it back up.
Yeah, they're gonna roll it over. They're probably gonna get more money per acre on this program.
But the point is not to not to have to go in there, till it up and then
You
reestablish it.
just add
Yeah,
CRP enrollment with row crop history.
yeah. I just want to cover if someone signs up through our program, 10 years go by, and they want to re-enroll it again, that we're covering that as well.
So how
So
we, just however it's stated before that.
yeah,
In CRP, it is qualified.
yes,
Qualify for CRP. You had never roll crop.
okay,
So
Yeah.
in logic, it should roll, the qualifier is there.
it is, yeah, because they consider it a row crop. Maybe we just put that CRP is considered a row crop. So
well, I would just say CRP is eligible, or don't say it at all. but
well, it's, if
permanent
it's in
pasture,
CRP though, I don't want it to make it sound like we could sign up our program and double dip.
No,
That's what I'm
yeah,
trying
yeah.
to.
Then you'd have to say CRP upon termination. It's eligible.
Just do that. About permanent pasture or CRP is not eligible except upon termination.
Yeah, right, of the CRP contract.
CRP.
Very good. No.
Okay, so I was down in the bullet point talking about all parties must approve the cost share agreement. No payments are made until then. The landowner shall install and maintain the buffer in accordance with the cost share agreement. And we will have an operation and maintenance plan that is recorded on the deed. So that's all the details of what they can and can't do. There'll be a start date when we verify that it's vegetated. That'll be the start of the O&M. And then it's either going to be 10 or 15 years from that point forward.
Do they need to keep the trees cut out of it?
we encourage it. And that will be part of our monitoring. If it starts to get overtaken by box elder, that's where it's nice to go in and do a periodic burn or mow some of those trees down. Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna be, it's still serving its purpose as a buffer if you get a few trees coming in, but we do encourage it, and that'll be part of the land plan to try and keep woody debris down.
So they just need to call you or get permission to go in and cut that tree down.
Yes, that would
Hopefully
be,
you get it before it gets too high.
yeah, that would be,
the mall.
and the harvestable buffer, that's gonna be a new point. It's gonna be more the out of production buffer for the.
Actually, all of them do say control undesired woody and noxious leaves.
Okay. Okay. So the other part, the third bullet point from the bottom is we put a note on here that the landowner is willing to install other practices determined to be necessary to make the buffer function as designed. So this example would be if you have gully erosion coming right into perennial stream, we're gonna want to fix that, put in a grass waterway, do something to get that taken care of on top of the buffer, and that would be eligible for caution too. We just don't want to have big gullies coming down right to the buffer. It's just gonna cause issues, and we need to look at the farm as a whole with some of those issues. The buffer area cannot be used as a travel lane or equipment or storage, or travel lane or equipment storage. Manure and fertilizer are
How
not.
you gonna keep four-wheelers or UTVs?
No,
They
it's
need-
it's not like that. I mean, I guess what we're talking
No,
about is we don't
travel,
want to
travel.
become
Where
the.
it gets beat down, where it becomes a farm lane. If you're
Okay,
occasionally
yeah.
going through there with your four-wheeler, that's okay, but we've had some where it gets beat down and the buffer's gone, they're using it as a road. They don't want to drive in the field, you can't. Yeah, that'll fall into our monitoring when we go out and see. That can create gullies, just. Manure and fertilizer are not permitted in the buffer area for the duration of the cost share agreements. We need to maintain 70% cover. That means perennial or permanent grasses, legumes, forbs. The buffer needs to have at least 12 to 16 plants per square foot when established. Must provide a water quality benefit, and we'll calculate the environmental benefits in the buffer. So that's a sediment and phosphorus savings. And I've already referred to this. We are getting a monitoring program set up within the department. We haven't done that in the past. So we are getting monitoring done every 3 years. So we go out there, we'll reflag it, we'll check it, make sure everything's good, and have a rotation once every 3 years with all of these conservation buffers. So now it refers to the attachments with some of the details for each of the buffers. So if you flip to the first one, the field road buffer. So again, this is a buffer between the field and the road to slow down wind erosion and aid runoff into the road ditch. And we have some of the NRCS standards that we refer to with all these buffers. And some of the guidelines are that the buffer must be along a public road ditch and approved by us. It's in a 10-year contract from the time of plant establishment. Minimum buffer width is 35 feet, the max is 60 feet. And if you have 60% or more of a field enrolled, we can enroll the entire field. So if we're cutting off a little field, we can just enroll that whole field if you're taking more than 60% of that field. For cool season buffers, the seed mix must contain at least 50% cool season grasses, of which 25% will be sod forming, not bunch grass. And then this is the harvesting and maintenance. Some of the details on that for the field road buffers are that you can go in and mechanically harvest once annually between July 15th and September 1st. So July 15th is for nesting birds to get out of there, they can nest. And then September 1st is to allow the vegetation to regrow. We don't want them cutting the end of September. We want to make sure that buffer gets reestablished. If we come in and harvest it once. If it's warm season grasses, it is prohibited. There's no harvesting in warm season. Cut the buffer to a minimum of 6 inches. Like Sheila alluded to, the control of undesired woody and noxious weed species is encouraged.
Just say one thing, August 1st is actually the end of the nesting season for CRP. You want to be consistent with CRP or not?
We've seen both. I've seen mixed messages with that. I've seen July 1st, I've seen July 15th, I've seen August 1st.
It's been August first now for quite a while.
We still have, we call them EE birds, what's the correct term for those birds? They have, they nest on the ground. We just had a hatch of them.
Okay.
I just thought.
There, some of their nests are still
Mhm.
out there.
We can switch it if you want. The committee wants to switch it to August 1st.
It might be more consistent with, federal government standard. Is that an issue?
Oops,
See,
that would
we're
be-
being crap, so.
Any comments from the committee? I think,
Consistency is great.
yeah. So we'll change that to August, right?
And that is it for the field road buffer. Does anybody have questions? on that one? Okay. We'll move on to the street side harvestable buffer. So these are a cool season buffer between a field and an environmentally sensitive area, such as a perennial or intermittent stream or lake, and then filters ag runoff, but allows the producer to harvest the perennial cover. Like you heard earlier, there's crap in some of these other programs that can't harvest, so this is why we wanted to create a harvestable buffer. It's a unique practice that I think you might get more buy-in with some of the producers out there because they have that flexibility to harvest it. Some of the guidelines are you need to be within 150 feet of an eligible water body determined by the department. Contracts are again for 10 or 15 years, starting at the time of plant establishment. The minimum buffer width is 35 feet and the maximum is 150 feet. And like the field buffers, if 60% or more of the field is enrolled, we can enroll the entire field. And it must be a cool season buffer, and the seed mix must contain 50% cool season grasses, of which 25% will be sod forming. And then for this one, we have mechanical harvesting is allowed anytime before September 1st. So we're not restricting anything before that, but we are after September 1st to let it become reestablished to grow. So again, more harvestable, they can harvest it. I don't know if they get 3 cuttings out of there a year, what they'll get, but we wanted to create some flexibility there. Again, cut it to a minimum of 6 inches and to control woody and noxious weed species. That is it for the harvestable buffers. Questions on that? Okay, the last one, again, this basically echoes our existing vegetative production buffer, outer production buffer in the county program. So these are again designed between a field and an environmentally sensitive area, perennial intermittent streams and lakes to filter ag runoff. These are within 60 feet of an eligible water body, 10 or 15 years, a minimum of 35 and a max of 60. Again, the 60% or more can be enrolled for the entire field. 50% cool season grasses, of which 25% will be sod forming. And mechanical harvesting of cool season buffers may be permitted. We had July 15th again. Here we want to probably change that to August 1st. And September 1st, this would need approval from our department because these are out of production. So they would need to get approval from us to be able to do that for the cool season. Warm season, they cannot harvest. And then they need to control undesired woody and noxious weed species. And that is it.
Questions of chat?
Again, I know Julia talked about the rates, 10 versus 15 years. We have them the same right now. Be consistent with our county program, but
Just a general question, do you have much buy-in to your program today?
we have minimal, but we haven't advertised it because funding is so limited with it. So we've had a few, but we have not done hardly any outreach on our buffer program.
I can just comment on the 10 to 15 year end, Julie was concerned, but part of the deal to go with the 15 years because you're afraid the funding might end up drying up on you, so you lock yourself into 15 years so you don't lose out on it. So even though the rate is exactly the same, kind of like taking a loan at the bank, you want to make it longer in case the rates go up. So I think there is a benefit.
But this is all paid up front, correct?
Yeah, so for example, let's just look at the stream side vegetated out of production buffer. So the payment up front for a 10-year contract, and I know you guys can do the math, but it's 3,000 an acre. They get paid up front, 4,500 an acre for 15 years.
Yep.
So they get a little bit more per acre, but
Right in
then
the
they're,
beginning.
yeah, but then they're committing to 5 more years.
So there are two different ways of looking at it, even with the rate being exactly the same.
Yes.
And if I understand you correctly, the information that I received in my head was that keeping it the same creates less paperwork for you guys.
Keeping it the same would keep it consistent with our existing program. So the other route we could go is if you were to increase the rates for, and it's just the stream side vegetative out of production buffer, that's the program we have now. If you were to increase those rates or change it, then I would recommend the committee, then we bring our county program back to you to make it consistent so they match. Because it's the same program and I don't want to have two different payments for two programs in the same department for the same thing. So that's what I would recommend if you were to change the rates, that then we bring the county program back to you to adjust that policy.
And in my head, it's keep it simple. Whatever is simplest for you guys. Is why create more?
And if we see again, like we talked earlier, if we're not getting many people biting into the 15-year contract, maybe then we talk at the end of next year and say, we're not getting people committing to 15 years, we should be thinking about increasing. We could do that.
That's your option. So a year from now, in theory, or August,
To
to
which,
come in working, you can make some adjustments.
to which we go back to becoming one of three.
They're all part of the discussion, yes.
The first guys will tell you how to fix that.
Boy, what do you know about that? Okay, I think we've gone through it. Before I ask for a motion, is there any other concerns or questions?
Just one question. Is it a 10-year contract or a 15, or could it be anywhere?
It's one or the other, 10 or 15.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the Conservation Spirit Fund Buffer Program.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And again,
Amendments?
we're gonna have this so we can bring it at the end when we're all done.
When we do the final policy, I'll allow to go back of the three programs. And if there's something that the committee needs to amend or change, we'll allow that.
I think this is an example of Sheila bringing
Yeah,
a note on that one, something like that may pop up as we review it, or that's reason.
yeah.
And then with that, we're, like Chuck mentioned before, we're gonna make it look nice and a nice package. We'll have a cover page, we'll have a summary of the program, some of the guidelines of the program, then we'll have our RFP process in there that we're gonna have a simple application. And then just some overall procedures that will start it out and then we'll put a table of contents, package it all up. So that's kind of it.
Well, and I like the fact that it comes back before us on an annual basis.
Yes, me too, because things change, right? I mean, the economy changes, farming changes, I mean, it's nice to have that flexibility.
If there's no more comments, I have a motion to that. Is there a call? Okay, I didn't call a question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, hearing none, the motion carries.
And it's more of a question for the committee that's come up within the department. So we have existing contracts that we signed up that we carried over for projects this year. If these funds get approved would we be okay signing another contract to get them up to that 90%? Or do we just pay?
You mean an amended contract?
It would be a new one because the Spirit Fund program would be a brand new source of funds. So we would sign a second agreement to go, for example, from 70% to 90%.
I think the farmer should be given the option.
Well, option and sort of the point of this money was to
Good,
improve.
get it out on the line.
And get it out.
So absolutely.
But on the same token, if you signed a contract with something, you didn't know this is coming. you're
That's
gonna-
kind of my question, because we have carryovers from last year that we haven't put in yet, and they'll happen probably this fall.
Are they activated though? But they signed the contract.
It's a signed contract, but it's for different pots of money, like our county program, our DAC funds. So do we present to them that we can get you one? The project's going either way, but I'm just wondering, do you want to do the paperwork to give them that little increase if the timing works out?
Is there any history of this happening before to adjust, go back?
This is a first time dealt with this, so.
How many projects do you think this might encompass?
There could be 4 to 6 projects potentially.
If I was locked in 70%, I would be pissed if everybody is getting 90 now.
It's
And
that
Well,
transition.
I don't know if I said it quite properly.
Yeah, that'd be a little upsetting. I wasn't informed of it either.
You knew what I meant. I believe, and I don't know what the total dollar amount is, but if you're talking 4 to 6 people, I would certainly suggest we give them the option rather than to.
I would check council because it's no different, the simplicity of it. If you have a house
Yeah.
loan at 2% now, today's 8, I mean, the same thing applies. You can't mess with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I would see council for that question.
I can ask the question. I mean, we have the contract, existing contract where that's not gonna change any of that. We're just adding a second one to increase it. I think it's okay. We have some that just want to get the projects in and
Well,
they don't care.
before they consummate the activity, can they drop out of the project?
Explain that, what do you ask?
You have signed contracts.
Yeah,
Before they start doing the activity,
yeah.
they got the contract signed,
Yes, they can pay out.
Implementation,
The only
yeah.
thing they wouldn't, we have an earnest payment that gets paid out. They wouldn't get their earnest payment back.
but can they back out? So they couldn't they could
Yeah.
back out of their contract besides the earnest payment.
Yes,
And how much is the earnest payment?
it's not like between $100 and $300.
Well, there's your answer.
There's your answer.
Back out and just sign up for a new contract.
But again, we have the money, it's carried over. We need to spend it or we get knocked from the state. So
So that's.
Well, we're supplementing that.
this
by
is a
20%.
supplement that I'm looking at. We don't,
I would ask. council.
yeah, we will honor that money. It's 50 or 70%, but then we want to get them up to 90, just sign a Spirit Fund
Yeah,
contract. So
it's a supplement.
Ask council.
I think once it gets approved, I'm good doing that if we had to. It's just a
Sure.
timing thing and we'll see how it all shakes out. It's that transition right now,
Great, absolutely.
moving forward, so.
Okay, nothing else, we'll move to agenda item D, review and approve the Winnebago County Water Quality Improvement Program cost share agreements, of which we have one from Melvin South.
Yes, so he has a waterway that's experiencing its jumping out and gullying through his farm field. So we're looking to start this one probably later this summer to get this project done. About an acre in size.
For 12 grand almost, huh?
All prices are going up. The prices we are seeing are
Oh, my.
What are they
God.
charging per foot?
10, 12 a foot now. Yeah, it's getting, prices are getting crazy.
So they're gonna reform the waterway.
Yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of it's a diversion that's built into the waterway and then rebuilding the waterway that's jumping out.
For an acre. Oh,
I forget how many linear feet it is, but yeah, price per cubic yards, everything's gone up. That's where I want to get these bids out way in advance because we're just seeing crazy numbers, which doesn't surprise me, but our money just isn't gonna go as far as it used to.
motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, opposition, motion carries. Next one is agenda item E, review the Land Water Conservation Department project list. I see a Jim Riff on there.
So I'll start from the top. and we'll-
You don't want to start from the middle?
So Ledge Rock Dairy, actually, Melvin Selly, that's Lydell Hefty, runs the previous project you just approved. So that's a separate project, and then we went out there and Ledge Rock Dairy, Lydell Hefty, just north of this site, has some really bad erosion that he's gonna put in a waterway. So that's another project that came up when we went out there. So we'll be addressing that as well with Lydell. And Lydell is one of our champion farmers for our Great Lakes grant that we have for soil health initiatives. It's really nice starting to work with these farmers. They're getting more involved with our department and they're bringing us to see issues. It's just nice to build those relationships.
Chad, do they then tell other farmers about this? So that it's like a pebble dropping in the water and just expanding?
That's what I'm hoping, you know, as we get the spirit funds established, we'll have a brochure that we can have available at field days to give to some of these champion farmers to, you know, hand out, and that's how we're gonna get the word out. Yep, and they're out in the field, I mean, they're talking to each other more than we are, so we put a lot of trust in the farmers to be able to spread the word. For sure. Yep. The next one is Oshkosh Realty Corp. That's run by Eric Whiting. That's a wasp cob. There's a lot of erosion out there on that site, so we're looking to do a project out there with a wasp cob that basically collects the water at, for example, the top of a hill, and then pipes it through the farm field where it's all washing across the farm field. So it collects it, stops the erosion, and pipes it out. It's what a wasp cob. It's water. Stand for again, water.
And sediment control.
Sediment control.
Explain the Oshkosh Realty Corp, so it's not an individual landowner.
They just own the land and it's leased by White. There's all.
Who's farming?
He's farming. Yep. Yep. And then again, that would be recorded in the deed for 10 years.
In that case, we're just paying the contractors.
So how that works is Whiting will pay the bill to the contractor 100%.
Okay,
And then we get verification that it was paid, and then we cut a check back to Whiting to pay it for whatever percent cost share.
okay.
Yeah. And now we're on Jim Riff. That project, it's a maybe, but 20 years ago, we put in a buffer on that site, and it's a kind of an L-shaped channel. We did a native buffer. Turned out nice, and then it just kind of got away on him, and then he started like killing off certain species to try and control it. It was out of the operation and maintenance period, and he was asking about re-enrolling it for another 10 years with a buffer. Haven't met out there with him yet, but he was interested in maybe re-enrolling that into the program and reestablishing that buffer. That is not in good shape right now. He did an addition out there, from my understanding.
Is he in compliance with shoreline setback?
Village, I don't.
My concern was, I went there to just look at this project and built probably $400,000 addition onto the house. Be it garage, living quarters, big fireplace, etc. Built, I believe, at the very least, right up to 25 feet, which is surprisingly the village's setback from waterways. And pretty much in the process of the construction phase, they did have the silk fence and everything else up. Took out all the bushes, shrubs and everything that was there. I gotta tell you, I have a heck of a problem spending county money to replace the bushes and shrubs around there. When I look it up, it was a $500,000 addition that encroached on it. I have a problem with that one, and I don't know if he's come back, maybe I'm way online even, but I would encourage members of this committee to drive down there and take a look at it before we approve funding to reestablish some of that stuff.
Lay it over.
Was it a stake even on that, like in front of his house or wherever he built the extension, not to include that?
So the rule is if you have a corner of a house or a building, you can leave 15 feet from the corner of the house towards the water body open. So there's a little bit, it's a minimum of 20 to 35 feet is our buffer program. So if the buffer, that 20 feet, for example, comes right up to the house, they could knock off 15 feet and only have 5 foot of buffer in that one spot. There's a little bit of flexibility.
So does it qualify?
It would qualify. Well, let me back up before I say that. Because this was enrolled, I was back and forth, do we sign him up again? Then I looked at when it was signed, it was 20 years ago. And the reason I put it on here is because if he re-enrolled and reestablished that buffer, it would be tied into 10 more years on the deed. If he were to sell, we know we're getting a conservation practice in for 10 more years. That's why I put it on.
Or is there a chunk of the buffer that you could take out? Or does it
He
have
he
be
needs to
contiguous?
do, it's 7, you can leave 30% out, but it's the whole L shape of his frontage needs to be done, except for 30% can be left for access to a dock or a boat or have an area. So if you have 200 feet, you can leave 60 feet of that open for access to the water. Minimum of 20
It
feet.
sounds like you utilized more of that.
And it needs a buffer, I won't deny that, it's a little hard for me to swallow when I went and looked at it, so, trust Chad's judgment and whether he comes back, but we do get a chance to vote on that one, or
Oh, yeah, that'll come forward to you if he
that'll come
calls
back
back.
if he pursues that.
Exactly.
Okay,
And just to again remind all of you, we do have a cap with this practice. Because it is a lot of frontage, we had to put caps on this, so I think it's a little over 4,000 would be the cap. And they still need to do the whole practice, 70%, but that would be our cap. Because it can get kind of crazy with plants versus seed and what they do, prepping and all that good stuff, so.
and if anybody's curious, if you're in Winning County, you just go past the village hall and just go all the way to the end of South First Street.
First,
Across the bridge, First Street, go all the way to the end, it's drive too far, you're gonna be in the water, so when you see water in front of you, look to your right, and it's very obvious
I'm gonna look at it
what
tonight.
they did,
Yeah.
what they hope to do, and I just, bring it to everybody's attention.
I gotta run over there, Seth.
What if they want to establish there? Then? Or what's the requirement? Buffer vegetation.
It would be, it's a minimum of 20 to 35 feet. It's all native plants, it's forbs, grasses, shrubs, and some trees. And it just establishes a shoreline buffer, is the program, essentially. So we have it,
Beneficial to me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's gonna have long, right up to the water, you know.
yeah, it's an approved practice through our department, and we have obviously a lot of water frontage in this county, and a lot of people that mow right to the edge. And it is a commitment for 10 years to give up that frontage, and a lot of people don't like it, but it's becoming more and more popular. We're seeing, actually this morning, I had an email that rented a sod cutter to pull the sod out on one that we're cost sharing, and they're gonna be installing it soon, so. Yeah, it's a neat practice, but we have to limit the funds because.
And those that go up to the edge also spray to make sure they don't have a dandelion too.
Oh, yeah.
And
And fertilize.
in his defense, Jim has fought that whole channel and grown all sorts of stuff there over the years, so. He's totally in favor of it, I'm pretty sure his wife's gonna want right up to the end.
I think they're battling each other.
It's gonna be surprising who wins.
Yeah.
That's why if they're willing to do it, that's a huge, just probably benefit for the community to see somebody with those kinds of options available, establishing this instead of just lawn.
Yeah. Yep, and we have to, as a department, I want to get some nice signs made up to showcase some of these buffers from the lakeside and really start advertising more. So we're gonna start looking at getting some more signs for the department for rain gardens and for shoreline buffers too.
you're on.
Oh, I have two more. Oh, there's a bunch on here.
Shanna,
Okay, so the next one, Kurt Sadawaska.
Sadawaska?
Yeah, I don't know.
Sadawaska.
So this one, I was actually at my nephew's baseball game. He's one of the coaches, and my brother-in-law introduced me to him. And he bought a property south of Oshkosh that is currently farmed, and it's dull, and he wants to do some work out there. So Melanie from our office went out there. He wants to do a wetland scrape and a waterway on that site. Looks like a good spot to do it. There's some erosion running through the property, and it looks like a perfect site to do both the scrape and waterway. So that one is advancing. And then Thistle Dairy, they're looking to expand their manure storage and I think their feed storage as well. So we put that on here because we have to review the designs, the engineered designs, because of our livestock waste ordinance permit. So we review that, approve it, issue them a permit for their expansion, and then we have to be out to oversee construction of the manure pit.
Have they started digging already? They're moving dirt?
I hope not, because I didn't got a permit yet, so I don't think so, that I'm aware of, but I haven't been down there, so. Yeah, so we have two of our capos actually expanding. Cross Farms is another one that's putting up above ground storage. Really big above ground. I think it's 300-foot diameter above ground for manure. Yeah. So I didn't review the plans too closely yet, but that'll be another one that we have to permit.
Okay,
They have the Cross Farms have the permit already, or that all has to go.
It's through DNR and we're in the process of reviewing it right now internally.
Reason I ask, I've got a few construction guys staying at the resort that are putting in a storage facilities somewhere, so.
Probably, yeah.
I don't know if they're ahead or behind.
Well, I don't think the permit's issued yet by us.
And
They're
maybe
usually
they're
pretty good.
just doing the engineering and designing of it, I don't know.
I know he likes to move quick. Dave's like moves fast, and I swear every 2 or 3 years there's something going on in that one. So,
Are they interested in cost share at all or pursuing anything? I mean, we can work with cables. I know you probably something stuff.
we can work with CAFOs with our spirit phones. It's all eligible CAFOs, which is nice because the field practices, it's definitely an untapped area that we could start trying to promote some practices. I don't know if Dave is interested in funding or not. He didn't ask us about it.
Yeah, I think so.
He's pretty much at that. Any questions on the project list? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Always hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.